My name is Emily Harper, and I still remember the exact moment I stopped being a daughter, the night the pretending ended. 1 year after my graduation, I stood across the street, watching flames consume Marsh Manor, the house I rebuilt with my own bare hands. As the heat pushed against my face, my twin sister, Hannah, stood sobbing on the curb, screaming about faulty wiring. I did not flinch. I did not reach out to comfort her. I just leaned in and whispered, "I left the warnings, Hannah, but you preferred the glow of a lie to the safety of the truth." I did not wait for the sirens. I simply turned away, clutching a heavy envelope from the Savannah Police Department. This was not a tragedy. It was a closing statement. Have you ever been treated like a second-class citizen in your own home? Drop a comment and let me know where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. I would love to know who is part of our community. And if you have ever had to take your power back in total silence, let me take you back to where it all began. The night was dressed in white linen and the smell of salt water. We were at the Savannah Yacht Club for our college graduation party. On paper, Hannah and I were equals. We were twins. We had both finished our degrees with honors. But in the eyes of our parents, Jennifer and Christopher, the balance sheet was never even. Hannah was the blue chip stock, the high return investment they showed off to their friends. I was just the overhead, the administrative cost of their perfect family image. I remember the way the low jazz hummed over the deck and the clinking of champagne glasses that cost more than my monthly car insurance. Jennifer stood up, raising a crystal flute with that practiced, maternal twinkle in her eye. She gave Hannah's shoulder a squeeze, a gesture of warmth she had not offered me since I was 12 years old. She started talking about how proud they were, but the praise was only directed at one side of the table. My father, the silent partner in their showy marriage, reached into his blazer pocket and pulled out a sleek, white key fob attached to a rose gold keychain. He dangled it in the soft evening light for the entire table to see. He told Hannah that her new apartment downtown was waiting for her. 26th floor, riverfront view, fully furnished. He called it a launch pad for her future. $1,500,000 of parental love, delivered on a velvet cushion. The guests erupted in applause. Hannah let out a high-pitched squeal that seemed to vibrate in my very teeth. She rushed forward, flinging her arms around them, already calculating which corner of the balcony would look best for her Instagram stories. I just sat there, my lemonade going warm in my hand. I felt like a ghost at my own celebration, a silent investor in a firm I would never own. Eventually, the spotlight shifted. It was an afterthought, a realization that I was still sitting there, occupying space. My father did not reach into his pocket this time. He tossed something across the table. It was not gold. It was not sleek. A ring of 3 rusty brass keys landed near my plate with a heavy, metallic clatter. My mother did not even make eye contact when she spoke. She told me there was a property on the east side, a family asset that needed what she called a little elbow grease. She told me to think of it as a blank canvas for my restoration studies. I picked up the keys. One had a faded plastic tag that read 37C Oakley. I knew that area. It was the part of the city people drove through with their doors locked. It was not an apartment. It was a ruin. I looked at the keys, then at the fob in Hannah's hand. The contrast was not a mistake. It was a message. My sister giggled and told me it probably had character. I did not cry. I did not ask why. I just gripped those rusted scraps of metal until they bit into my palm. My compassion had been a luxury they had overdrafted for years, and tonight the account was officially closed. This was not a gift. It was an eviction from their hearts. Fine. If they wanted to give me a ruin, I would take it. But I was done playing the role they had scripted for me. I pulled up to 37C Oakley with everything I owned in the back of my car. The house did not just look abandoned, it looked like a dare from the universe. The porch sagged under the weight of decades of neglect, and the air inside was thick with the scent of soot and old secrets. Most people would have seen a fire trap, but I saw a balance sheet that finally belonged to me. I had spent every cent of my $45,000 scholarship fund and 4 years of saved wages on raw materials and specialized tools. I was not just fixing a house. I was auditing my own life. The work was grueling and clinical. There were nights I slept on the bare subfloor because I was too exhausted to walk to my car. My hands were a map of small scars, blisters from the sander, and cuts from the jagged edges of reclaimed oak. I spent weeks on my knees, hand polishing the floorboards until they glowed like amber. By the time I finished the living room, I opened my wallet to find exactly $296 left. It was my entire net worth, distilled into a few thin bills and a house that was finally starting to breathe again. But I had one thing: they couldn't freeze the diamond-encrusted Cartier watch they'd gifted me at graduation. It wasn't a token of love. It was a prop for their yacht club photos. I walked into a high-end pawn shop in downtown Savannah and walked out with $6,000 in cash. It was poetic, using their own vanity to fund my evacuation. People often ask why I did not just walk away that night at the yacht club. They do not understand the invisible chains of a survivor. For 22 years, I lived in a prison without bars, conditioned to believe that my silence was the price of my existence. My family had turned my life into a liability they managed with calculated cruelty. My silence at that table was not a lack of courage. It was a tactical withdrawal. I was saving my energy for the only thing that mattered, building a fortress where their voices could no longer reach me. In the back bedroom, hidden behind a warped closet panel, I found a relic of the life I had left behind. It was a ceramic angel I had had as a child, the one Hannah had broken during a tantrum years ago. One wing was missing, and half its face had been smoothed into a swirl of melted glaze by the old fire. I sat on the floor and cleaned it with the same precision I gave the oak beams. I used professional-grade adhesive to mend the cracks, turning the scars into part of the design. It was a broken thing, but it was standing again, just like me. I placed the broken angel on the windowsill, a quiet monument to everything that had survived the flames. I had just hung the last piece of art when I heard the familiar crunch of tires on gravel. I did not have to look through the window to know who it was. The scent of designer perfume and the sound of entitled footsteps preceded Jennifer into my living room. She did not look at me first. She looked at the walls. She ran a manicured finger along the wainscoting I had painstakingly restored and let out a soft, satisfied hum. Behind her, I could see Hannah sitting in the silver SUV, her face obscured by oversized sunglasses, the picture of a fallen queen. My mother did not offer a greeting. She simply opened a leather-bound planner and set it on the butcher block island I had built from scratch. She told me that Hannah's Riverwalk apartment had been liquidated. Apparently, my sister's career as a lifestyle influencer had not quite covered the interest rates on that massive 7-figure mortgage. Then came the clause in the contract I had been too naive to see coming. Jennifer looked me in the eye and said that since the deed to Oakley Avenue was still technically in her and Christopher's name, they were reclaiming the asset. She said Hannah needed a fresh start in a space that was already curated. I had 48 hours to vacate. The air in the room did not grow cold because of the breeze. It grew cold because I finally saw the bottom of their ledger. I had been the silent investor in their version of family, and now I realized it had been a subscription with me footing the bill. I did not cry. I did not ask why. I did not mention the sweat I had left in the floorboards, or the thousands of dollars I had spent on materials. Anger was not loud this time. It was clinical. I rubbed my eyes, trying to summon regret, but there was only clarity. This was not a breakdown. It was a balance sheet. I looked at the 48-hour deadline on her planner and simply nodded. I told her the house would be theirs, exactly as it was meant to be. As soon as her SUV pulled away, I started clicking. I did not call my friends to vent. I called a professional logistics team and a crew of industrial movers. If Jennifer wanted the house, she could have the structure, but the soul of this place belonged to me. We started at midnight. The movers were efficient, stripping the house with the precision of a salvage crew. I watched as they unscrewed the custom Navy cabinetry I had paid for. They removed the high-end appliances, the designer lighting fixtures, and the smart home safety systems I had installed to keep the old place from burning down again. I had the invoices for every single item, all under my name, all paid from my account. I kept every single receipt organized in a digital vault. In the eyes of the law, I wasn't stripping their property. I was reclaiming my documented private investments. I left them the bare, skeletal walls. They provided me nothing more, nothing less. My compassion had been a luxury they had overdrafted for years, and now I was liquidating. By the second night, the house was screaming, not with ghosts, but with the lack of me. The rooms that had been vibrant and warm were now echoing chambers of gray drywall and exposed beams. I even took the smart thermostats and the modern fuse box I had upgraded. I left the old frayed wires dangling from the ceiling exactly where I had found them a year ago. I was not being vindictive. I was performing an audit. I was returning the property in its original condition, minus the upgrades they had not earned. As the sun began to rise on the morning of the 48th hour, I walked through the shell of the building one last time. It smelled like dust and failure again. The vibrant red door was gone, replaced by the original kicked-in wood I had stored in the shed. I placed my keys on the bare kitchen counter. Beside the keys, I left a folder containing every warning I had ever given them about the structural integrity of the building. I had officially closed the books on the Harper family. I was leaving the ruin they gave me, and I was taking my future with me. The hallway did not smell like sawdust and sweat anymore. It smelled like expensive stationery and the heavy silence of legal consequences. I sat in a leather chair across from Gregory, a man whose reputation for precision was the only thing sharper than his suit. I was not there to vent or cry about the house. I was there to perform a professional audit of my own liability. I laid out the folder I had taken from the kitchen counter, the one filled with every email, every text, and every ignored warning I had sent my mother over the last 12 months. Gregory looked through the documents with the detached focus of an accountant. I explained that while I was restoring the property, Jennifer had repeatedly interfered with the safety upgrades. She had cut the maintenance budget by $15,000 to fund Hannah's birthday trip to Cabo, calling my concerns about the electrical grid expensive paranoia. She had refused to sign off on the final city inspections because she did not want the tax assessment to go up. I told Gregory I needed a shield. I wanted a formal document sent via certified mail stating that I was officially relinquishing all civil and criminal liability for the property at 37C Oakley. I needed it on the record that the electrical and gas systems had never been commissioned or approved for occupancy, because the owners of record, my parents, had actively blocked the safety protocols. We drafted the letter in under an hour. It was cold, it was factual, it was lethal. It detailed the exact state of the fire trap they were so eager to inhabit. It explicitly mentioned that the main service panel was compromised and that I had placed a physical tag on the breaker box that read, "Do not operate." By the time I signed the bottom of that document, I realized I was not a daughter anymore. I was a whistleblower in the corporation of my own family. Sending that certified mail felt like the final step in a tactical retreat. I was not just moving out of a house. I was moving out of their line of fire. I went back to the house one last time before they arrived, not to look at the view, but to verify the evidence. I took a time-stamped photo of the "Do Not Operate" tag. I took a video of the frayed wires I had left exposed in the kitchen, the ones Jennifer had refused to pay to replace. As I walked out and locked the door with the original, rusted key, I felt a strange, humming clarity. For years, I had been the one holding their world together, providing the labor and the silence that allowed them to feel superior. I had been the glue in a structure made of rotten wood. Now, I had removed the glue. I had left them exactly what they asked for, and I had a paper trail to prove that I was no longer responsible for the inevitable collapse. Inside my laptop, a new spreadsheet glowed, one made of facts, law, and quiet retribution. I was no longer playing their game. I was the one who had written the new rules. The paper trail did not stop at the porch of 37C Oakley. It led directly into the vaults of a history I had not even known existed. 2 days after I sent the certified letter, Gregory called me back to his office. He was not holding the folder about the house this time. He was holding a stack of bank records from the Eleanor Hayes Trust, a fund my grandmother had established for me before she died. I had always been told the trust was modest, just enough to cover a few years of graduate school. But as Gregory slid the documents across the desk, the numbers told a different story. The account balance did not show the $800,000 it was supposed to contain. It showed zero. My eyes tracked the withdrawal history. One massive transfer of $750,000 had occurred 3 weeks after Hannah's first business failure. Then another $50,000 a month later. I looked at the digital copies of the withdrawal slips. The signature at the bottom was mine. It had the same sharp loop on the letter E and the same slight tilt to the left. But as I looked closer, the precision felt wrong. It was too perfect, like a traced memory. I did not panic. I did not feel the sting of betrayal in my chest. I felt a cold, analytical focus. I told Gregory to pull the original files from the bank's high-security archives. We spent 3 hours comparing the documents to my actual signature on the house restoration contracts. That is when he found it. A minute inconsistency in the pen pressure, a characteristic mark of my mother, Jennifer. She had not just been biased, she had been criminal. She had forged my identity to strip mine my future, to pay for Hannah's mistakes. I sat there, in the silence of the law office, watching the afternoon sun hit the mahogany desk. I realized then that my parents did not just see me as an afterthought. They saw me as an asset, to be liquidated. They had stolen nearly $1 million from the one person who had actually worked to honor Grandma Eleanor's legacy. Gregory told me this was no longer a family disagreement over a dilapidated house. This was identity theft and grand larceny. It was a federal offense. I rubbed my eyes not to wipe away tears, but to sharpen my vision. This was not a family dynamic anymore. It was a crime scene. Jennifer and Christopher had overdrafted my loyalty for 2 decades, and now they had overdrafted the law. I looked at the evidence in my hand, the clear, undeniable proof of their fraud. They thought I was the one who would always bend, the one who would absorb the impact of their greed without making a sound. They were wrong. I was not just a daughter they had failed. I was the person holding the keys to their prison cells. The envelope from the Savannah police wasn't just a courtesy notification about the fire. It contained the formal fraud report for the $1.5 million you embezzled from my trust. In this country, signatures can be forged, but the digital paper trail to Hannah's accounts doesn't lie. I looked at Gregory and told him to prepare the criminal filing. This was not revenge. This was a closing audit of a bankrupt relationship, and I was going to collect every cent. The night of the Marsh Manor rebirth party was exactly the performance I expected. I stood on the sidewalk a safe distance across the street, watching the glow of the garden lights through the trees. Hannah was live on her social media, her phone mounted on a heavy ring light that drew more power than the old kitchen circuit was ever designed to handle. I could see her through the windows, twirling in a designer dress, telling 10,000 strangers about the months she had spent hand-polishing the oak floors. It was a masterpiece of fiction. She was performing a life she had not built, in a house that was now just one overloaded breath away from collapse. I looked at the phone in my hand. I had the time-stamped photo of the "Do Not Operate" tag I had placed on the breaker box. I had the certified mail receipt proving that Jennifer and Christopher had received my formal warning. My mother had ignored the law, ripped off the tag, and pushed the system to its limit just to provide a backdrop for Hannah's fading brand. Jennifer had cut the maintenance budget to fund the catering for this very night, choosing the light of vanity over the safety of a home. The first sign of the audit was a flicker in the living room. Then came the flash, sharp, white, and unmistakably electric. Behind the silk curtains, a spark found the dry, exposed beams I had warned them about. Within seconds, thin ribbons of black smoke began to billow from the rooftop vents. The music stopped, replaced by a scream that sliced through the night, high, panicked, and unmistakably Hannah. Guests spilled out of the red front door like ink on a white page, stumbling onto the lawn as the fire found the ceiling. Jennifer and Christopher pulled up in their SUV minutes later, screeching to a halt in a chorus of sirens. My mother ran toward Hannah, but then her eyes found me standing under the street lamp. She did not ask if I was okay. She did not ask if anyone was hurt. She grabbed my arm, her voice shrill with a different kind of terror. She told me I had to help them. She said the insurance company was already asking questions. She needed me to tell them that the wiring was perfect, that I had certified the safety protocols myself before I left. She told me that if I did not help her get the payout, they would lose everything. I did not flinch. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper, a copy of the certified letter I had sent via the legal team. I watched her eyes scan the text, landing on the part where I officially relinquished all liability due to her intentional blocking of safety inspections. I showed her the photo of the "Do Not Operate" tag she had discarded. I told her the insurance company would not be writing a check for $3 million. I've already forwarded my certified warnings and your signed refusal to fix the hazardous wiring to your lead insurance adjuster. In the state of Georgia, that's called gross negligence. You didn't just lose a house, Jennifer. You lost your right to a payout. You're officially on your own. They would be filing a report for criminal negligence. I watched Hannah sob as the roof finally caved in. It was the ultimate demonstration of the illusion of power. My sister had spent her life confusing having with being. She thought that because she had the keys, she had the talent. She thought that because she stood in a beautiful room, she was a person of substance. But wealth is just a borrowed coat if you do not have the character to fill it. When the money vanished, when the Riverwalk apartment was gone, she did not have the skills to survive. She only had the greed to take from me. And now, as the fire consumed the last of her vanity, she realized that an empty person in a hollow house is just an echo. I leaned in and told Jennifer the truth. I had given her exactly what she gave me, a ruin. And this time, there were no more daughters left to fix it. 1 year after the fire, I stood in my new architectural restoration studio, a small, sun-drenched space that smelled of cedar and fresh possibilities. The case against Jennifer and Christopher was settled. They were forced to pay back every cent of the trust fund, plus legal damages, which meant liquidating their own home to satisfy the debt. Hannah moved into a small, rented apartment, no view, no skyline, just the reality of her own lack of skills. I opened the box I had kept in storage since that final night at Oakley. I pulled out the broken angel. Its wings were still scarred, its face still held the memory of the heat, but it was solid. I placed it on the windowsill where the morning sun hit it. This was my real inheritance, not the money, but the understanding that you can only be broken if you believe you belong to the people who are trying to shatter you. I am Emily Harper. I am no longer a daughter of their making. I am the architect of my own life. Success is the loudest answer you can give to the people who tried to keep you small. If you believe in the power of building your own future, hit that like button and subscribe. Let us show the world that justice always finds its way home.